Oh boy, what is up? Welcome in. It is post Loons. It is March 25th, 2023. My name is Jeremy Rushing, back on post Loons after a bit of an absence to start the 2023 season. I've been focusing more on the writing side and the day-to-day match coverage side of things here, but I am super stoked to be back on the post Loons post-game show tonight. And alongside me, somebody who, dare I say, has become a good friend of mine in the Minnesota United community over these last couple of years. Complimentary podcaster, I should say, for Minnesota United, the host of Pod on You Loons. It's Mr. Cheesehead Sam himself. Sam, how are we doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on. We've done a few of these, and it's been a lot of fun. And tonight, we may not, be doing this podcast under the most fun circumstances, but I am excited for our conversation. Before we get into everything we have to get into, I have a feeling it's going to be a very long conversation tonight on Post Loons. So strap yourselves in, everybody. Get ready for the show. To let you know that if you are watching on YouTube, you can leave a question or comment in the chat. We will respond to it on the air. We have quite a few questions already to get to. So if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you can leave a question. If you're watching on Twitter and you want to submit a question, you're going to have to go to our YouTube channel. You can watch, you can hang out, you can have a good time on Twitter. But if you want to kind of submit a question or interact with the show, you're going to have to do that over on our YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube and search Post Loons or search Sota Soccer, or just head to our Twitter account at Sota SOC. You should find the link to the YouTube version of Post Loons there. While you're here on YouTube, tap that bell to be notified when we drop a new episode of Post Loons or a new video, a new interview on our YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, all that good stuff. To make sure that you're getting our content in your feed, notified whenever we drop something new here on the YouTube channel. We're trying to grow that YouTube following. You have like 120 subscribers. Would love to get that up to like 150 by the summer, but we can only do that if you all subscribe. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. And also just make sure you're following us at sotasoccer.com, on Twitter at Sota SOC. Let's go ahead, Sam, before we get into our three things, let's jump into a few of these comments here. Paul Forrester is kicking things off. He says, absolute BS. And I have to imagine he's talking about the length of stoppage time there. We were given 6 allotted minutes on the board. Adrian Heath said after the match he was told that the goal was scored at 7:32. So a good minute and a half. We've seen extended stoppage times before, but I don't know about you, Sam, and I guess we can jump into this particular topic right off the bat so we don't have to spend all night talking about it. To me, it didn't seem like there was really anything that warranted, 90 extra seconds, 2 extra minutes to stoppage time. I get it if there's a sub. I get if there's, an extended time of somebody being down hurt. Even, some poophousery can extend stoppage time a little bit. But in this time, it didn't really seem like there was much to extend stoppage time, nor really give us 6 minutes to begin with. I was very surprised to see 6 on the board. And I have to admit, I was checking my watch a couple times over the course of stoppage time, wondering when that whistle was going to blow.
Yeah, I saw a few Minnesota United and MLS reporters talking about the official wasn't necessarily happy with some of the time-wasting tactics by Minnesota United. I didn't personally notice anything too overt, right? Just typical soccer stuff, right? You have a 1-goal lead. You're trying to milk time off the clock. That is part of the game. I didn't notice anything from Minnesota United being too overt. What I would say to the official in that case is, you're so smart. And I'm not saying that to mock him. You are an MLS official. You get paid to do this. So please explain to us what we're missing, because you have these big fans of the game that watch multiple games a week. We know what we're to expect during stoppage time, and this seemed to overdo it. You put on 6 minutes of stoppage time. If that goal would have been scored at 96:30, we might not be having this conversation. That would maybe make sense. But 97, you said 32?
97:32 is what Adrian Heath said. He was told the exact time that the goal was scored.
Yeah. And on my end, I was thinking it was like 97:28 or something in that range. Yeah. Still a little excessive. So that is on the official. Again, the official is the professional. They are they are supposed to be the smart one in this situation. Explain to us laymen why that goal was allowed to happen at 97-32.
Yeah, I mean, again, an explanation would be great. I think if the this is a weird example to be using on an MLS postgame show, but like if something like the XFL has shown us anything, transparency in these review processes or in these particular cases where we're asking a lot of questions on why certain referee decisions are going to be made, transparency is huge in alleviating a lot of that confusion and alleviating a lot of that wondering why or asking questions, because it was one of those issues where, maybe there is a good explanation for it, but we're not ever going to find out. We're not ever going to find out why Rosendo Mendoza added 2 extra minutes onto stoppage time, right? So that's where I think it irks me, is just the lack of transparency in these scenarios. Not necessarily. I mean, obviously the decision leaves us confused and leaves us scratching our heads, but the transparency is where I get a little bit bothered from that. But it is what it is. It's the, Adrian Heath said all week long, no excuses, right? No excuses at all. Regarding the absences on this team, I have to imagine that also translates to whatever calls are being made or whatever decisions are being made or not made on the pitch.
Now, I did have to ask, did you have any Jeremy and Sam on Post Loons deja vu? Jeremy and Sam talking about Minnesota United playing
and Vancouver and a late goal. Oh my gosh. I just realized I did not even think of that. Not even think of that. The last, and I guess maybe not the last time we did Post Loons, but there was a match last season. No, it was not.
No, it was 2021. I had to load it up. July 31st, 2021. We were at Vancouver. It was like a 91st minute. It was Ethan Finlay seemed like he had the inside track toward the ball. He, of course, is inside our box. The Vancouver player collides with him and is awarded a penalty for colliding with Ethan Finlay. We never got an explanation for that.
Yep. Something about Minnesota, Vancouver, late drama, late referee decisions costing Minnesota United points. It is what it is. But Blah jumping in. First of all, I love the name Blah on YouTube, and it's very fun to say, hey, Blah is asking a question. So Blah, appreciate the input as always. What a truly disheartening end to a well-fought game. Yeah, and that's where I think we're going to start our 3 things here, Sam. My first thing is actually going to start on a positive note. I thought there's a lot to take away from this performance positively for Minnesota. You consider the circumstances, down 7 guys who have started a match, at least one match over the first 3 games of the season, right? All 7 first-team international players have started at least one match for Minnesota already early on in this season. So you're talking about that kind of impact being lost. You add onto that the Emmanuel Reynoso situation, right? So technically you could even say 8 key players missing for Minnesota United in this match. And they take a 1-0 lead into the absolute death. And it takes, 7 minutes, 97-32, I guess, the exact time for Vancouver to find the equalizer and walk away from Allianz Field with a point. I think it shows kind of the character of this team. I think it shows the fight in this team. I think it shows, the collectiveness of this team. This team had no business, this lineup being put together had no business showing really any cohesion whatsoever, with so many new players and so many new places, so many guys making whether it's their professional debuts or their Minnesota United debuts. Like, there were so many guys on this, who got in this match who hadn't really ever played together in such a competitive circumstance, right? And I don't really even think preseason can replicate this kind of environment. Regular season, a match with stakes at Allianz Field, 19,000 fans. And we saw a lot of, discombobulation at times in this match, but they were doing enough to get 3 points until they eventually didn't. But I think when you're talking about takeaways, I don't leave this match saying, man, Minnesota United has a lot to work on. I don't have that impression from this match at all. I come away from this match saying, man, if this team in this circumstance can put together this kind of performance, it makes me very optimistic for what, a full strength fully together Minnesota United team can do over the course of the season, because the sustainability has been the question. But if this team, as it was tonight, can do this, it makes that sustainability, it makes me a lot more optimistic, I guess, about the sustainability for a full strength Minnesota squad as we head further on into the 2023 campaign.
I would agree. I originally had this as my second point. I'm going to bump it up to my first point because I think it goes along with this very, very well. We have some good depth. I know that our bench was a little bare in terms of players that have had plenty of MLS experience for this game, but you got to figure, right? 7 of our starters today, or well, 6 of our starters today would normally be on the bench, and you're not, right? You're not using 6 subs in an entire game. We have depth when we need it. I thought Clint Irwin, for example, looked the part today. Obviously, has quite a bit of MLS experience. We were able to just pick him up. I know we were very worried with the departure of Tyler Miller. We were very worried, what kind of backup would we have to Dane St. Clair? And actually, this reminds me a lot of, well, for the longest time, we had 2 starting caliber goalkeepers and we were trying to offload one, but we really couldn't get any value for one. Both making starting caliber salaries. We weren't going to be able to get anything for Tyler Miller last year when we were trying to shop him. Not anything that would have warranted selling him anyway. When you have someone like Clint Irwin that you're able to pick up on a backup salary, who has all the MLS experience that he has with Colorado and with Toronto, and you're able to plug him in whenever you need him, and he looks the part of a starting caliber MLS goalkeeper. I thought that was just a great example of the depth we found, right? We've said goodbye to a lot of, crowd favorites, right? Ja'Cory Hayes, respect the tuck. I was a little bit surprised to see him dismissed in the offseason, but as we have every single season, just that bar just keeps getting raised for what does it mean to be a starter on this team? What does it mean to be a bench player on this team? And that bar just keeps raising, right? Ja'Cory Hayes was a quality backup for so long. We said goodbye. Jan Gregish, still is a starting caliber player in this league, just signed for Nashville. But he was a guy that we were like, okay, I think we can make up for your play with someone that is cheaper in terms of, Kervin Arriaga, right? The bar just keeps raising. And we're doing a good job stocking up on that depth. I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean, depth has always been kind of a question for this team, right? What does this team have depth? We've thought in certain past seasons that this team had depth, and when push came to shove, in times where those guys were called upon to play bigger roles, the results weren't coming. I think tonight is a great example of, even when you go down past that first layer of depth, having to go down to the second layer of depth, having to sign guys on one-day contracts from MNUFC 2 to come up and fill out the roster, and them getting, somewhat significant minutes in the second half, and still kind of getting a point and still putting together a performance that many would deem worthy of a win tonight. I think that shows that this team does have some real depth this season to go along with a pretty darn good starting 11. Too. I know Ray's not here, obviously, and he would make that starting 11 look a lot better on paper. But even without Ameno Reynoso, this starting lineup looks pretty darn good. And as you mentioned, the depth really showed in spades tonight. My second point has to do with just one particular aspect of this team that I'm really impressed with so far this season, and that is crossing. Whether it's Zarek Valentin, whether it's Franco Fragapane, whether it's, whoever is sending balls in, whether it's from a set piece or whether it's just from the run of play, this team seems to be putting cross after cross on a plate, on target, exactly where it needs to go. And that just helps you create so many dangerous chances. And I've said this multiple times, but that is so much more important, that you don't have that run of play chance creator like Reynoso. You have to find new ways and sort of manifest new ways to generate chances. And, crossing and high level crossing is a great way to do that. And you saw it tonight. Zarek Valentin put one on a plate from Ender Garcia. Franco Fragapane is shown to be super dangerous in set piece situations with crossing as well. I'm optimistic that it sort of adds a new dimension to Minnesota's attack that they really desperately need if they're going to score enough goals to get the results they need to put themselves in the playoff picture at the season's end.
Yeah. And playing off of that, I was really impressed, or I don't want to say, well, yeah, impressed, but also optimistic about how we've added a lot of speed to our attack as well.
Mhm.
Obviously, Dunbar today, this was our first glimpse of him for Minnesota United. Brought a lot of great speed in. We've obviously seen Mender this year. Think about last year at this time, right? Think about last year at this time when we were looking to add some speed to the attack, right? Who are we adding in?
Mhm.
Two players are coming to my mind. Who would come to your mind as far as who we were adding into our attack if we were looking to add some speed?
So are you talking about like last year, this year?
Yeah, like last year at this time, like early season last year.
So Bongi Longwani is somebody who came in and provided a significant
Yep.
amount of speed to this team. That was, if there was one thing he brought to this team, he may not have brought really a lot else, but
Yeah.
forward, north south pace, Bongi brought that in spades last season for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
And
gonna
then
leave the other
I
one to
had
you.
one more.
I'm gonna leave the other one to you.
I thought Abu, right?
Yeah.
Whenever we were looking to, sort of add something, right? We kept talking about that pair sort of as the super subs early last season.
Mm-hmm.
We kept talking about them. Now, Bongi, right, is a hot prospect for us.
Mm-hmm.
He's really come on this year, but especially early season last year, he was looking pretty raw. And right, Abu, right, you kind of know who he is at this point in his career. He is an MLS backup. He was a backup for us last year. He was not a starting caliber striker as much as we loved him, right? You're my boy, Abu, right? Like we love him.
Yep.
We love him. But you think about trying to add speed to the Minnesota United attack last year. It was those guys. Well, now we have Bongi, who has advanced in his play. We did add Mender Garcia midway through last season, who has also advanced in his play.
Yes.
Dunbar, we got the first glimpse of him today, and we now have our new South Korean signing, Sangbin Jang, who I know was in the Wonderwall today. I saw him.
Yep.
I saw him on the Capo stand with the True North Elite. That was pretty cool on the broadcast. So we have some real speed coming in at the top, and you saw some great through balls today, whether it was by, Trapp or Valentine. You saw some great through balls today. And, I was listening to Mark Watson on Sound of the Loons, who was talking about that. That's the kind of player that Sangbin Jang is going to be for this team, running in behind defenders and going towards that ball. So I'm excited about the speed going forward. It's just not something we've been used to as Minnesota United fans.
Yeah, that was the attacking plan for Minnesota tonight, was to just try to time runs, try to send balls in behind that Vancouver defense, and hopefully one gets through, right? That seemed to be the attacking identity that Minnesota had tonight. None of that really happened so much in the run of play in terms of getting balls through and actually netting a goal from that. They had numerous opportunities in those circumstances. Obviously, the goal coming from a cross, but yeah, I mean, getting more speed, getting a guy like Bongi in there and Sangbin and adding more pace to what Minnesota United was able to do tonight. When you're relying so much on counterattacking and building from the back, and you're not going to have that one guy you can just give the ball to and say, "Hey, here you go," and make something happen. You need pace. You need guys who can run off the ball, who can time runs to get in behind the back line. That's what Minnesota was trying to do tonight. They were successful in doing that on a couple occasions. Unfortunately, couldn't put the ball away in those particular circumstances. But again, when you get that full strength squad together, if they're able to do that successfully through the season, just adding another element, another way Minnesota United can gain goals. My final thing, it's not, I guess it's kind of reiterating, I guess, a point I've already made. But I mean, you held on until you didn't, if you're the Minnesota United back line and Minnesota United defense. I asked Adrian Heath in the press conference if there was something more that they could have done to try to relieve that pressure valve, to try to maybe get out and just keep the ball away from their own box instead of sort of packing it in and just taking on sustained pressure for the entire second half, which is basically what was happening. And he said maybe there were times they could have sprung out on the counter, and maybe if they had kind of more experienced players as a whole on the roster and had more experience lineup, and maybe they would have taken those chances a little bit more instead of staying compact and taking those chances from Vancouver. That was really, I guess, my only nitpicky critique of Minnesota is maybe they could have tried more to, sometimes your best defense is a good attack. Sometimes your best defense is keeping the ball away from your own goal. And I thought maybe they could have done a better job of that over the course of the second half. But I mean, that's, again, getting super nitpicky, especially considering how many guys were getting their first MLS minutes tonight.
Yeah, you put aside, right, the fact that we seem to have more stoppage time than we were supposed to have, and you just look at the stats, right? Vancouver significantly outdid us in terms of possession. They had like at least 10 corners. I forget if the final corner was the 11th or if it was the 10th, but they had quite a few corners on us. Their expected goals was over 2 or right around 2, compared to us at like what, 0.5 or 0.6. I'd have to look back. And
0.64 for the Loons.
0.64. Yeah. So stats wise, Vancouver not only won in the stats, but significantly outperformed us in the stats. So if you just look at the stats and don't take into context how late their goal came, right, you really can't complain from a Minnesota United perspective as to, it's 1-1. If anything, just looking at the stats, you're like, okay, we're lucky that it's 1-1. But right. And we joke as Minnesota United fans because we hear this phrase, this cliche phrase so often, right? The goals change games. Well, I mean, the truth is goals do change games. Adrian Heath probably doesn't sub off Mender, Franco, and oh my gosh, who's the third one? It's
Marquez came on. Hold on. I'm looking up. Fragapane came out at the end.
Yeah. Mender and Franco, and who was in
Cameron Dunbar. Sorry, Cameron Dunbar was.
Yep. 3 players that were heavily involved in the attack. Adrian Heath subs them off. Adrian Heath doesn't do that if he's not trying to close off this game. And this game wasn't so lopsided in the stats prior to those substitutions being made. We had a game plan change because we were 1 up. He doesn't do that. I mean, you think about the players that he subbed on. Yeah, Iwe is an attacking-minded player. But the next 2 that he subs on are more defensive-minded players that he subs on in favor of the attacking-minded players. He doesn't make those decisions if he's not trying to close off the game. And it almost worked. It should have worked. If you allow Vancouver enough chances, enough stoppage time, eventually they're going to break through, and they did.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thinking too, is you at some point need to relieve the pressure valve because, again, at some point the dam is going to break. They almost held on that dam, but they couldn't till the end. And I think it was kind of, in a way, you can argue the stoppage time and you can argue, whatever you want to as far as the refereeing and the officiating goes. I get that. It's warranted. But at the end of the day, you need to do what you need to do to hang on to that lead. You can't rely on officials to bail you out. You can't rely on outside circumstances to bail you out in those scenarios. Adrian Heath even said this week, no excuses, right? And so I thought they could have done more to release the pressure. They didn't, and now obviously ended up conceding the equalizer. Sam, I know you got one more thing here.
Sorry, my mute button.
You're good. No worries.
My last thing is just a trivia question. Just
I love a good trivia question. You're the trivia guy, so I should have known this was coming.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Iwe comes on, right? He was a second round pick for us this year. Even though he was on our second team last year, he was a second round draft pick for us this year. So I have basically a 2-parted question. How many of Minnesota United's second round draft picks have actually signed for Minnesota United? And how many have made an appearance?
Okay, so I know one of the 2019 guys, whether it was Gasper or Dotson, was a second round pick. So that's at least 1. And Iwe makes 2.
Yep.
So I'm going to say they're the 2 to have made an appearance. But I don't know who the third is. I'm going to say there have been 3 that have signed, 2 that have made an appearance.
You are correct, right? Dotson was the first to make an appearance. Iwe now the second to make an appearance, as well as the third to sign. We did sign our 2017 second round draft pick. He never made an appearance. He was a French guy, and I'm going to butcher his name. It
Hit me with
was Thomas de. I didn't take French class. Thomas de Villardi.
Okay.
Villardi.
I think you got Villarte, maybe. You got to use kind of like in French. I did take French class in high school and a little bit in college. I could conjugate every verb in the language, but I couldn't have a conversation past 35 seconds. If John Marthaler is still here watching Post Loons, he is the MNUFC historian. So he will probably know how to pronounce the guy's name too. So John, if you're watching, hit us with a pronunciation in the comments. But I think the thing we need to take away from this is I was 100% right? 3 have signed, 2 have made an appearance.
Yeah. We'll say you were 100% right in terms of the question. Yeah.
All right, cool. That's all that matters. Before we shout out one of our great sponsors here, let's get into a few more of these questions. A lot of questions coming in the chat. Paul Forrester says, on a positive note, I liked what I saw from the debutants. Yeah, I mean, we talked about Emmanuel Iwe, Zaydan Bello making his first MLS appearance. Cameron Dunbar obviously making his first Minnesota United appearance, as did Clint Irwin. So a lot of young guys getting first runouts tonight, which was really good. John Marthaler says, Rosendo Mendoza says this is not going on long enough. And then John does have info on, at least we get a statement from Mendoza on what happened in stoppage time from Andy Grader. Says, quote, a minimum of 6:30 was going to be played, but there were further extended stoppages for which more time was added. I think that goes to your point, Sam, in terms of maybe he saw some of the time wasting as extended stoppages, although I also don't necessarily like the subjectivity of what a stoppage does mean in soccer or Major League Soccer specifically. Let's go to a few more of these questions. We got MJ says, what's different this year compared to last year and previous years? Do we have the 2 to 3 players now that Heath has talked about? Any other changes in the offseason as far as coaches or anything? Seems cohesive this year. Not too many significant coaching changes. I think a lot of the coaching changes or additions happened at the next pro level and at the academy level. I will say, and we were kind of, when the Reynoso situation was playing out in the preseason, at least my thinking was, if this team is going to have success, it's going to be because they find a collective identity, both on the field and off the field. They find a way to kind of put all the pieces together on the field to work as a full unit tactically and find a tactical identity where they're utilizing every player and relying on every player in some way, shape, or form to contribute. That's, I thought. And then off the field, camaraderie, guys getting together and providing that cohesion, that friendship, that kinship that can translate on the field. I thought kind of that would be the recipe where Minnesota United would find success. And I think we are kind of seeing that a little bit. I think we're seeing the absence of Reynoso providing a little bit more of a well-rounded tactical approach for Minnesota. They're going to press you high with the midfielders. And if the opposition breaks that first line, then you're going to rely on your back line to stop any attacking sequences. And then you're also going to press high, try to force that midfield turnover and get a short counter the other way to try to get a quality situation or a quality scoring chance. You're going to rely on crossing. You're going to rely on overlapping. You're going to rely on activity on the outside to try to send in crosses and generate opportunities that way. That's kind of what Minnesota United has done. We saw it work in 2019. That team ended up getting the 4 seed in the West and hosting the LA Galaxy in the playoffs. First time Minnesota hosted an MLS playoff match was in 2019. They did not have an Emmanuel Reynoso. They did not have a talisman. They did not have one guy they could just give the ball to and let him make things happen, right? You're seeing kind of that play out here in 2023 for what I would argue is actually a marginally better top to bottom roster in 2023 than you had in 2019. So I think that's kind of the difference, is Heath is kind of reverting back to that 2019-esque, philosophy, tactical identity, whatever it is, but doing so with an all-around better roster. No disrespect to the 2019 team. I know that Ozzy Alonso, Eichel Para, that was the Hassani Dotson emergency, or Mason Toy did some things for this team in 2019. I don't want to disregard what that team was able to do and who that team had. But when you look at this roster as a whole and the depth, as we specifically mentioned earlier, Sam, it seems like this is a much better all-around team, kind of, having that same identity and just, transitive property thinking there, you would think you would have better results.
So I think I've texted with the Dummy Run guys about this. Do you think when Heath says 2 to 3 players, we're 2 to 3 players away, do you think he's just messing with people?
I think it's like an Englishism. Like, we're 2 to 3. Like, I think that's just kind of like an off thing it's almost like, I don't know. I think it's something, because you hear it said like in a lot of other, like if you watch English football or you watch anything, that 2 to 3 this, 2 to 3 that, that like it seems to be something that's casually just used in conversations when talking about anything that's like multiple things. So I mean, yeah, I think it's more due to that, but there could be a sense of him, kind of messing with us too. But I mean,
he's not a tune out the noise type. He's not a
no, absolutely not. Quite the opposite,
type.
Actually. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, like he's probably even listened to my silly podcast at least once, not because we're worth listening to, but because he just seems like the type that wants to know what people are saying. And I think that he hears Minnesota United. He hears the Minnesota United Twitterverse going off about, here's Heath saying 2 to 3 players again. And I think he just drops it in whenever he can just to get us going. But I also think, right, because he's a funny guy. I haven't met him. I know you have. I get the impression he's a funny guy. But I also, right, like the MLS, right? The MLS it's a growing league. We are getting better as a league every year. We're getting better as a team every year. I think what you said earlier, Jeremy, about this team, no disrespect to 2019, man, that was a great team. That was a fun season. Very fun. Disrespect to them. I think right top to bottom, we're better in 2023. Even if we don't finish as high, we're better in 2023. I feel the 2023 team would beat the 2019 team. Well, when you keep improving year to year, you're going to need to keep getting new guys. You're going to need to keep getting higher quality players, maybe 2 to 3 of them. It makes sense to me.
I think every team, honestly, when you look at the offseason, when you look at who they're trying to bring in, probably are trying to bring in 2 to 3 new players, impact players, right? I feel like that's kind of just a general thing maybe you're trying to look at. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it's I think it is kind of funny how it's kind of blown up and become a thing among Minnesota United Twitter and the Minnesota United fans, and I'm here for it for sure. Whether it's on purpose or not, I'm here for the banter always. I'm also here for talking about our friends over at Pentz Homes. I love dishing on Pentz Homes. They have been supporting Sota Soccer since the beginning. We launched 13 months ago to the day. Actually, Sam, is when Sota Soccer launched, February 25th, 2022. And since day one, Pentz Homes has been on board supporting our work. So you should support them, not just because they support us. If you follow Nate Pentz on Twitter, he's huge into Minnesota soccer. He's a big Minnesota United fan, but he's also pretty damn good at his job, which is helping people buy and sell homes and make them the happiest they can possibly be in that process. Anybody who has sold or bought a home or done both in the same process knows it's stressful. It's not really all that fun. It's not really all that exciting. It's kind of dreadful. But Nate and his team, they're able to kind of take a lot of that pressure off, a lot of that anxiety out, and just kind of guide you through the process in a way that's very low pressure, but also is going to get you top dollar for the home that you're selling and get you in a new home for a price that's within your budget. That's what Nate and his team do. They were just down in Florida recently for a conference where they're learning more, and they're constantly getting better at what they're doing. They're constantly improving, and they're constantly doing what they have to do to help all their clientele. And if you don't want to take it from me, which is fine, I probably wouldn't take it from me either, go to their website, pentzhomes.com, and check out the reviews. There are reviews upon reviews upon reviews. You can look them up on Google and find reviews upon reviews upon reviews of people who would give Pentz Homes 5 stars. I even saw one that said, quote, I would give them 10 stars if I could. That is the experience people have with Pentz Homes. When you hire a realtor for this process, you want to make sure you're hiring somebody you trust and somebody who knows what they're doing. Nate and his team check both those boxes, people. So if you're in that process, I highly recommend you hit up our friends over at Pentz Homes. Again, you can go to the website, pentzhomes.com, get the process started there. It's free to talk to them. It's free to have a consultation. Why wouldn't you take advantage of that? If I've sold you here, you can email Nate directly. You see his name below, Nate, Nate, at pentzhomes.com is the email if you want to hit him up. And when you're doing so, I combine both those words into one. While you're doing so, make sure you let them know that Jeremy and Sam from Post Loons sent you over there, because they're supporting us, and we want to make sure that they know we are supporting them by telling the fine people who watch our podcast about Pentz Homes. Okay, Sam, so let's get into some of these sort of marquee moments in the match here. This has been something that I think there are a couple specific concerns that have kind of shown themselves with Minnesota so far this season. One is set piece defending. We didn't really see that come into play tonight. The second one, though, is how they're starting the game and starting the second half, how they're starting each half. It seems like it's been a pretty constant theme that this team starts immediately each half on the back foot. And it's really shown itself specifically in these first two home matches, where right off the kickoff of the game, we have seen A+ scoring chances for the visitors within the first minute. It happened with Lewis Morgan in the Red Bulls match, and it happened tonight where there was a shot from Vancouver, and I'm trying to find who actually got the shot. It may have been, I'll find who actually had the shot in a minute. But anyways, off the crossbar, 40 seconds into the match. This is something it's something to keep an eye on. If they can't tighten this up, when you're facing a team like LAFC, when you're facing the Galaxy, when you're facing Seattle, when you're facing Kansas City, Cincinnati, whoever it is, a team that can make you pay, you could find yourself down 1-0 in the blink of an eye, and that is not a good spot to be in.
Yeah, and right, we tend to settle in, like, we haven't tended to be punished by this, but it is a recurring trait of Minnesota United in games. And right, that just doesn't sit well. I can't imagine it sits well with Heath. I can't imagine it sits well with the players. Yet it keeps happening season after season. We tend to start games slow. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's just the nature of our style of play. Being willing to give up possession a little bit in favor of just being a little bit more stingy on defense. I don't know if that has something to do with it. I don't know. You are right. It is a recurring theme. It doesn't totally make sense. We haven't really been punished by it, but that possibility is there, right? That possibility is there. I don't have the stat in front of me, but we tend, right, and it makes a lot of sense, because we tend to be a 1 goal a game kind of team, right? Not a lot of French fries being dished out by McDonald's right now.
Even when they earn the French fries, evidently there's a problem getting the French fries. So you never know.
Oh, I did not hear this story.
Yeah, there were some people I saw on Twitter. There's some people who they tried to get the fries through the app, and something wasn't working, and the team had to take an extra day to figure out what was going on. It was a joke, people. You'll get your fries if Minnesota scores multiple goals. I promise. Don't sound any fire alarms and say Jeremy is telling you you're not going to get your fries. You'll get your fries. Anyways, continue. Sorry.
Either way, right? We are a low goal scoring team. Makes sense, right? We all know this about Minnesota United. So if we concede first, we're not able to play the game that we want to play. We're not able to use the tactics that we want to play, right? You saw in the 60th, 70th minute, you see us transitioning out our offensive-minded players, bringing in some more defensive-minded players. You see this game after game, season after season, right? When we score first, we're able to play the game that we want to play. When we concede first and we have to be the ones trying to score and salvage the game for us, we aren't able to play the game that we want to play. Sorry, this isn't, these aren't these just great revelations or these great hot takes that I'm dishing out right now. I'm just kind of stating the obvious, is that, if we are playing sluggish in the first 20 minutes, we are eventually going to let in those goals, and then we're not able to play Minnesota United football the way we want to.
Yeah, I mean, and if this team is going to have sustained success this season, it's something they're going to have to tighten up because, again, if they go down, not only just go down, but go down early, it can really change the complexion of the match. Not just tactically with what Minnesota United wants to do, but if it happens at home, it takes the energy out of the crowd. It can do a lot of things, obviously. Obviously, when you give up a goal first, it's not ideal, but it can really have a snowballing effect that works against you if you're Minnesota United. So something to tighten up for sure. So then that was Brian White who had that first opportunity off the crossbar after a Zarek Valentin giveaway. And giveaways were an issue tonight. 6 minute happened again. This time it was Dotson leading to a short counter for Vancouver. Gressel unmarked on the far side of the box. Back post marking, another reoccurring issue. It's something to keep an eye on. And the cross finds him beautifully. Irwin's able to deny the volleying effort. 14th minute was the first real opportunity for the Loons as Garcia presses high, forces a deflection at midfield. This is when Minnesota United, the way this team is structured, when I talk about that tactical identity of high pressing and trying to force those midfield turnovers and create short counter-attacking opportunities, this is what I'm talking about. Garcia presses high, back presses, forces a deflection at midfield, and then it's him and Amaria. It's sort of a give and go. The deflection goes towards Amaria's way. He gets the breakout pass to Garcia. But unfortunately, the Vancouver defense does recover before he can get a shot off. But, I mean, we kind of saw the good and bad from Minnesota United in the early going here. The 40th minute, though, is where we would get the goal. And I kind of want to stop here and talk about this for a minute. Garcia finds open space between the Vancouver center backs and talk about the crossing. Zarek Valentin right on the money, on a plate for Garcia. The Colombian finishes the header to put the Loons out front. I mean, we talk about Minnesota United football. This is it. Getting guys in the box, putting the cross in a good spot, having guys in the box active enough to work to get ahead on the ball. We saw it with Mickey Tapias against Colorado. We saw it with Mickey Tapias against the Red Bulls, where Bongi ended up scoring off the deflection. This is something that they need production via crossing, via set pieces, just different ways to try to generate goal scoring opportunities without Reynoso. They did it here. And it was a beauty of a goal, a beauty of a cross by Valentin. He was actually FootMob man of the match when you're looking at match ratings from FootMob. And I thought it was well deserved. Not only do you have a good defensive performance, but I mean the assist on this goal was well deserved. And they're going to need more of this from their outside backs, more overlapping, more crossing to find more goals if they kind of want to be that more than one goal a game scoring team and put some more crooked numbers on the board throughout the season.
Yeah, and I think we can't understate the significance that it was Mender on the other end of that cross, earning his second goal of the season, second goal in 4 games. He did not have a great game in the last game, right? He did not have a great game. Why am I forgetting who we played last week?
Colorado.
He did not have a great game against Colorado. Heath was not shy about that in his post-game comments about Mender Garcia.
Subbed off at halftime.
Yeah, that's right. Took him off at halftime and had some pretty harsh post-game comments on Mender. Now, I don't know necessarily how Mender responded to that, but we do know how Heath tends to, right? We do know the Heath doghouse. We do know how Heath tends to, bench players when he's not very happy with their play. And right, maybe this was the perfect week where Heath didn't have that option. Maybe Heath and Mender have the type of relationship where Heath was like, you know what, you just get right back out there. Don't worry about it. Be a goldfish, as Ted Lasso would say. Maybe it was that kind of thing, but we have seen a lot of Heath saying, well, if that's the form that you're in, I'm not going to put you out in the next game. I'm going to ride the hot hand.
Yeah.
So I do not know what the circumstances were that led to Heath trusting in Mender again, but Mender repaid him for it. It worked out. He gets, again, his second goal in 4 games. Minnesota United has been looking for that from an attacking player for a very, very, very long time. And if this type of form continues for Mender, you can't understate the significance that will have for the team.
Yeah, and I think if you take the goal out of the equation, there might have been some, I guess, some more questions about Mender's performance. But hindsight being 2020, after the goal, sort of looking back at the performance and what I saw from Mender Garcia tonight, I mean, he was one of those guys who was really active, trying to get in behind the back line. A lot of those, attempted through balls that just didn't quite work were sent Garcia's way, and they need more of that. And I thought, the 4-4-2 being what it was, Amarilla didn't really make much of an impact. He had a couple opportunities, but nothing like super significant. But I thought Mender was somebody who, he showed enough tonight to, obviously, make me comfortable, putting him back in the starting lineup next time out. I don't think it'll be another 2-striker formation with Amarilla alongside him. Maybe we start to see, I don't want to necessarily, jump off the Amarilla train too early, but maybe we see more Tani Oluwaseyi moving forward, depending on what happens. Because I thought Amarilla just, had another one of those performances where you're looking for more from him. So maybe Oluwaseyi gets a longer run out moving forward. Maybe they, try to mix some stuff up in the attack. But yeah, I mean, Mender Garcia has been a much needed bright spot as far as goal scoring goes, obviously early on. So I think that's a really, really good shot and a good addition to that. Looking into the second half, this is kind of where I guess we started to kind of see that pack it in, and when we started to see Vancouver really turn up the pressure. We talked about starting the second half. We talked about the beginning of the match, starting the beginning of the match slow. The second half, once again, an example of that. Heath has talked numerous times about this team needing to be better starting halves, whether it's the beginning of the game and the second half. Tonight, obviously, will not ease his concerns there. Off the kickoff, pretty much, Gressel finds a mostly unmarked Dahome in the box. Irwin's able to tip that header over the bar. Let's skip ahead, though, to the 51st minute. Loons break out with DJ Taylor streaking along the left, sends a really nice ball in the box towards Amarilla, but it's just ahead of the striker's reach. Now, here's my question on this, because I sort of mentioned this under my breath in the press box after this happened. How many times do we see this where a cross or a pass or something is sent Amarilla's way, and it's just like a step ahead of where he is? He is just a little bit behind where he needs to be to get on that ball. I don't know. I don't know enough to know if that's unlucky or if he needs to, be moving faster or putting himself in a different position to receive those crosses. But it seems like some sort of constant theme where Amarilla is just a step slow or a step off where those crosses or where those passes are sent into. I don't know if that's his fault or not, but it's something I've kind of noticed over these last couple of years.
Yeah. So, right. And I'm watching the TV broadcast. You were in the stadium, so you had a different angle than I did. And I'm not looking to assign blame or anything like that, because, right, I like these guys. I support these guys. From the TV broadcast, I thought that DJ Taylor's cross into Amarilla was a little out of reach. I thought that it more would be, if DJ Taylor could have that one back, he would just angle that slightly closer to Amarilla, and then Amarilla would have had it. Mm-hmm. That was my impression of it. And kind of based on Amarilla's body language, I got the impression that maybe Amarilla felt that too. If I remember right, he kind of, almost kind of like punched the air a little bit towards the ball in sort of frustration. I'm a little bit unsure, and I'm not trying to assign blame, because that's not what I'm about. I think DJ Taylor had a fantastic game. I think he's a fantastic player. There also was another moment later in the game where I believe it was Iwe takes a shot. It's pretty late in the game. It was one of the few times that Minnesota United had an attacking opportunity, and Iwe took the shot when, Luis Amarilla was probably pretty open and would have had a better shot at the goal than Iwe did. So I think there were, a couple of situations where I think you're right, where, Luis Amarilla, he's really probably not that far off from being Mr. 25 goals. It's just, he's maybe consistently just a little bit off from being Mr. 25 goals. So I still believe that is there, right? I still believe that Luis Amarilla can be the chosen one. But with that said, right, we have had a large sample size. We have had a very large sample size with Luis Emery, and I think we're kind of waiting for it to happen. We've seen glimpses of it. But I think you're right. We're always just a little bit off.
Yeah. And, again, not going to completely write him off, not going to completely jump on the train, but that has been one of the, I guess, themes of the early part of the season is just seemed a little bit underwhelmed with what Luis Amarilla has brought to the table early on. And I think, Mender Garcia is kind of a surefire starter next time out against St. Louis. So we get the debutants in the second half. We get Emmanuel Iwe, we get Zaydan Bello. Let's talk about those performances specifically. We talked to Iwe in the locker room after the match, just obviously about the disappointment of conceding late and the stoppage time and everything, but also about kind of his journey. And I think this is, something that we shouldn't necessarily overlook when we're talking about this match and the impact it could have moving forward. If guys like Iwe or Bello or, Dunbar, go on to be really high level impact players for this team, we'll always be looking at tonight as sort of the night that they got their official debuts for this team. Right. And I think there was enough seen from at least Iwe and Dunbar. Bello didn't really get his foot on the ball. He didn't really have much time to really show anything, but Iwe comes on and all of a sudden he finds himself streaking towards goal with the ball at his feet. Right. Now, granted, maybe he didn't make the best decision with the ball, could have passed it off earlier, gotten himself an assist potentially. But, you look at that as like, okay, he can make something happen. Cameron Dunbar, I was actually, the energy he brought and the pace he brought tonight, I was really impressed with what he was able to do from that standpoint. There was actually a point in the match where he's chasing down a ball that's headed towards the byline. And just before it crosses, he gets to it just before it crosses into the over for a goal kick. Just before that happens, he's able to run around it and get his foot on it. And it's just sort of like a blind cross, and nobody gets on the end of it, but it lands inside the 6-yard box between like the 6-yard line and the post. It was like a perfectly, like if you were to put a target on where you want to put that cross, nobody was on the end of it because everybody's kind of discombobulated. Like that was like an excellent ball. So like there are little things you can take from this match in terms of just the performances overall. And we talked about this a little bit earlier that you can see as positives moving forward. I would like to see more specifically from Cameron Dunbar moving forward, if I'm being honest. I want to see him get a longer run out on the pitch. I'm excited to see what guys like Iwe and Bello can do, and Devin Battleford as well at MNUFC 2 this season. See if they can kind of show out and maybe earn a longer run on the first team contracts officially, if you will. But this is also when we kind of saw the bunkering down and the taking of the pressure and everything like that. And then you end up conceding the late goal, which the sequence was a little crazy. And someone I really feel for in this scenario is Mikhail Marquez. He's trying to basically end the game. He gets around the ball. He sort of like juggles it to try to gain possession, but in doing so, he gives it up. And what ends up happening in this sequence is you get, I believe it was Vite on the right, sending in a deflected cross to the back post. And I think we know what happens from here. Sean Bescher puts it away, and that's the ball game. 1-1, the final kick of the match. We've talked about the stoppage time. We've talked about, a lot of the things that led to this. But Sam, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that sequence itself leading to the equalizer.
I mean, it was a fantastic goal, right? It was a fantastic effort. You can't take that away from Vancouver. I did have to go back and I listened to the commentary by three different crews trying to make sense of it. I listened to the commentary by the Score North guys, and the Score North guys kind of sounded like us, where they were just livid, trying to make sense of why it was allowed to go that far into stoppage time. Mm-hmm. Callum Williams, right? Our good friend Callum, on the just normal broadcast, as well as the MLS 360 guys, I, rewound and kind of watched their take on it. All of them were just so impressed by Vancouver. And none of them were talking about, I mean, of course, right, because they're not emotionally invested in Minnesota United. None of them were talking about like, oh, Minnesota United just got robbed. They were all talking about it as this was incredibly deserved by Vancouver. Again, we talked earlier about what were the stats going into the game. If you just looked at the stats, you'd say Minnesota United was lucky to be 1-1. Of course, we've said I don't agree with just looking at the stats when you consider the context, but it was right, like just trying to be a neutral here. It was impressive on the part of Vancouver.
Yeah, they were beating down the door the entire second half. I mean, it was going to come down at some point, right?
Don't give up until the whistle blows. That's what every coach at every level of sport you've ever played since you were kindergarten will tell you, is you don't stop playing until the whistle blows. And that's exactly what they did. I don't know. I don't have much more to say than that.
That's a good point. Whatever the Whitecaps version of post Loons is, that's the narrative. That's what they're saying. This team did not give up. They, did not rest on their laurels, did not say, okay, it's in the 7th minute of stoppage time. We've had a billion chances. I guess it's not going our way tonight. They kept the pressure on. They forced the turnover. They turned that into something. There's a lot of credit to be had for Vancouver as well. Vancouver has not really been, as far as results wise, not really been an impressive club over these first few matches. I think their most impressive result, aside from this one, was a draw against LA Galaxy last week. So, that's kind of, I think that's part of the reason why a lot of Loons fans are optimistic, even down 7 starters, that Minnesota could come away with 3 points in this one, being at home and facing a side, that hasn't really shown much in Vancouver. So what they're saying is, we go on the road. Yeah, it was a depleted Minnesota United side, but we're down 3 guys too. We go to Allianz Field, raucous crowd, and we steal a point at the death. They're going to take that a million times over. And yeah, when you look at the stats and you look at what Vancouver was able to do specifically in the second half, generating chance after chance after chance after chance after chance, it is objectively deserved for them to get that goal. When you add in the context of the extended stoppage time and everything like that, it doesn't seem so much. And when you're emotionally invested into Minnesota United, you definitely seem hard done by this. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. You play until the whistle blows, right? You play until the final whistle blows. Doesn't matter if it's 90 minutes on the dot. It doesn't matter if it's 104 minutes. You play until the whistle blows. And credit to Adrian Heath. He did not make any excuses in the second half. He stuck to what he said all week long, not making excuses. He translated that into this moment. He did say he was not given an explanation when asked the referee after the match of why there was stoppage time. Obviously, we got the explanation courtesy of the pool reporter, but he did not make any excuses in the post-game press conference and did not blame the officiating or the referees. He did seem very pissed off that there was 90 seconds added to the stoppage time, as I feel like any manager would be in that scenario, but he did not once say or indicate that was why they lost. So, I mean, that's the context to take into this or that's something to take away from this is, look, yes, you feel hard done by. You're probably pissed off. It's easy to blame the officials, but at the end of the day, you play the hand you're dealt. And the hand Minnesota was dealt was down 7 starters, packed it in defensively for the second half. They took in a lot of chances, and eventually one found the back of the net. It's soccer. It's soccer. Like, this is the sport. It sucks at times. It's the best thing ever at times. But that's sort of the contract, the unofficial contract you sign when you become a soccer fan, is you have moments and nights and circumstances like these.
That you do. Very unforgiving game.
It is. It can give you everything you want and more at times, and it can take everything away from you at times. But one thing that we will not take away from you is the opportunity to learn more about our friends at Golasso Kits, the newest partner of Sota Soccer and the Post Loons post-game show. Guys, if you haven't checked out Golasso Kits yet, just go to the website and you can play around on the Golasso Kits website. This is my favorite thing to do. So you go to GolassoKits.com and you go in the search bar, Search any team you want. National team, Premier League, Serie A, MLS, doesn't matter. And see what unique vintage jerseys they have on their website. And guess what? They have 2 vintage Minnesota United jerseys, NASL era Minnesota United jerseys on their website as well. So if you want to get yourself some vintage Loons merch, you can do that at Golasso Kits. If you want to get yourself a 90s Arsenal kit, if you want to get yourself a really cool US soccer, zip up, that's kind of vintage, you can do that as well. Whatever team you like, whatever team's yours, you can find something for you at Golasso Kits. So again, it's golassokits.com, GOLACO kits.com. Use code Loons. I know it says 20% off. That's a typo on my part when putting this thing together. I apologize. It's 15% off when you use code Loons at golassokits.com. Check it out. You won't be disappointed. Cannot thank the guys at Golasso Kits enough for sponsoring the Post Loons postgame show and what we're doing at sotasoccer.com. Really appreciate it. Okay, let's get into some more.
I hadn't heard of this. I'm on there right now. The prices aren't bad.
No, the prices aren't bad. It's like unique vintage type stuff. So it's not like you're buying the 2023 Northern Lights kit from Minnesota United. As cool as I think that kit is, you're getting like old school type merch and type kits from Golasso Kits, and apparel too. It's not just kits. Again, they have like a US soccer zip up. They have a lot of different, they have hoodies. They have a lot of different jackets. They have a lot of different things. So check them out, golassokits.com. Really cool website. Again, you can just kind of play around on there and see what they have. And you can spend hours doing that because they have a wide selection. Okay, let's get to some more of these questions and comments that we may have overlooked. Chris Alphaby, talking about the officiating, says, how do you even get to 6 minutes? There was little stoppage. I was honestly surprised when I saw 6 minutes come on the board as well. So there is something to be had there. MLS Updater. Mike from MLS Updater. I was actually just on his podcast last week talking about MLS Week 4. Had a lot of fun on there. A good friend of the show. Said, missed the game, but curious as to how Garcia and Amarilla played as a partnership. And did Minnesota really play a 4-4-2? Yes, Minnesota did play a 4-4-2 for reals. It happened. They didn't light the world on fire, but it was their first time doing so in a game situation. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. Let's see. Who else do we got here? John answering our question on the Frenchman said it was pronounced Thomas D. Irrelevant. Thanks for that, John.
All right.
Appreciate it. And then Marcus Huntsinger bringing us home with the questions here says, is it a problem that Vancouver, a team that hasn't won yet this season, was the dominant side for a majority of the game? No. Is it annoying? Yes. And on this night? Yes. But is it going to make me lose sleep? And is it going to make me, pessimistic about Minnesota United's chances the rest of the way this season? No, it's not. If they played this way with a full strength squad, if they played to this result with a full strength squad, then maybe there might be a little bit more anxiety and a little bit more questions to be asked. But I mean, with what the hand they were dealt tonight, the 1-1 draw, if you were to ask me before the game, hey, you'll take a 1-1 draw tonight, I would take a 1-1 draw tonight. So, and I thought there were more positives than negatives to take away.
I'm trying to think at what point in the second half I started, nail biting. It wasn't immediate. Vancouver had a good second half, but it wasn't until, right, Minnesota United does this, right? The final 10, 15 minutes are the worst. Mm-hmm. Right. I felt like this was one of those games.
Yeah. So, and I don't want this to come off as, so when Eway came on specifically, and then Bello came on a few minutes later, you could see that this was kind of new to them. You could see that there was some discombobulation. You could understand that these are not two guys that have just been training nonstop with the rest of the first team the entire season. It did kind of present some lack of cohesion amongst the squad. And I think between that and the fatigue, those are probably two big reasons why we kind of saw, the last 30 or so minutes that we did. I think it was right around that 65th or 70th minute that the pendulum really started to swing Vancouver's way. So that's a good point. All right. So on tap, we're going down to St. Louis next Saturday. It is the Loons' first ever MLS match against St. Louis City SC. I think the Doubloons and the STL City second team played last season during the MLS Next Pro season. So I don't know if it's necessarily the first ever matchup between St. Louis City and the Loons, but from an MLS perspective, it is their first matchup and first time down to City Park in St. Louis too. So that should be a lot of fun against the St. Louis City team that, I actually don't know how they did tonight. I'm going to look it up right now. Didn't pay any attention aside.
They were up like 3-0 prior to us hopping on.
4-0 win over Real Salt Lake. 5 of 5 for St. Louis. Wow. Not going to be an easy match, obviously, with that in consideration. But it'll be a measuring stick for this Minnesota United team. You'll have everybody back, presumably. You're going on the road to a team that is 5-0-0 to start not only to start the season, but also start their MLS expansion, just their MLS tenure as a whole. This is going to be a big measuring stick for this Minnesota United team, because the team that you could say is objectively good that this team has played so far this season is New York. And that was the snow bitter. It's tough to take anything away from that. So unless there's a foot of snow that's going to drop in St. Louis between now and next weekend, which I highly doubt, this is kind of going to be our first real measuring stick for how this Loons team can match up with another top contender. Obviously the team is number 1 in the Supporter Shield right now. I'm personally pretty excited to see how Minnesota matches up against a side that's playing as well as St. Louis.
Yeah, and we got the doubloons playing there the day after. So any Minnesotans going down there, I know it's spring break for a lot of people. You get to see a little doubleheader. Should be a good time. Jeremy, you have some St. Louis connections. Are you going down?
No, I am not, but Jacob Schneider is. We're actually sending Jacob down for the match. We're going to be on site in St. Louis for this one. He was
Very
bugging
cool.
me about it, wanted to go check out the new stadium down there. So we're going down there. Well, I guess Sota Soccer as an entity is going down there. I'm not going down there. Jacob is. So it should be a lot of fun. No, Sam, it's WrestleMania weekend next weekend. So I have other things that I need to be prioritizing. I'll still be here. I'll still be on Postlands next weekend, though I might be slightly distracted. But I think all in all, it should be a lot of fun. That should be a really fun matchup between Minnesota and St. Louis. Excited again to see how they match up. And then Easter Saturday, you go to Chicago to take on the Fire at Soldier Field. That should be an interesting one as well against a Fire side that we don't really know what to make in the early part of this season as well. So there's a lot to be excited about for when these guys get back. And Adrian Heath assured us this week that there shouldn't be any travel issues with guys getting back in time and getting, the jet lag out and whatever they got to do to be ready for Saturday against St. Louis. So should be a lot of fun. But Sam, any closing notes, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, other than if Sota Soccer ever wants to send me to any of these games, I can cover.
Okay, sounds good. We'll keep you.
Are we going to Miami this year? If you wanted to send me to Miami, LA,
you'll be on standby. You'll be on standby for a match. We'll let you know. We'll let you know if we need you. We'll call you in from the bullpen if we need you to use a baseball
I'm good
reference.
for that.
All right. Well, I'm looking over to my side, and everybody else has left the press box, so I should probably get out of here before the lights get turned down on me.
Sure.
He is Sam. Sam, tell everybody where they can find you and find your podcast.
Yeah, I'm on Pod on You Loons with my good buddies Justin and James. You can find us on any podcasting platform, just Pod on You Loons. You can find us on Twitter at PodLoons. You could find us on Facebook or Instagram, but we don't do a good job updating it. You can also find me at Cheesehead Loon on Twitter. Though, to be honest, not too active. So just find the podcast.
There you go. Cheesehead Loon himself, Sam from Pod on You Loons. Thank you so much for joining the show, man. We appreciate it. I'm Jeremy Rushing. Thank you guys so much for your support of Sota Soccer. We appreciate it. We'll catch you next week after Loons and St. Louis City. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody.